Welcome to the Urban Complex, a system of interrelated, emotion-charged ideas, feelings, memories, and impulses. This name takes the definition and lays out what a listener should expect. A podcast where ideas, feelings, and memories collide, leading towards meaningful change. I'm co-host Chris Richardson. Please enjoy the journey with the Urban Complex. Smarter cities for a stronger tomorrow.
All opinions by Chris Richardson, Dominic Papa, and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinions of Arizona State University or the Arizona Commerce Authority. Any endorsement of or messages from sponsors are solely supporting the production of this podcast. There is no relationship further than podcast purposes with any sponsor unless separately created with another entity.
Hey Chris, how's it going, man? Here's another week of the Urban Complex podcast. How are you?
It sure is. I'm kind of cracking up though. We've always been very informal. You can tell work's crazy right now, and we're both here. I think the first time wearing long sleeve collared shirts. So I'm just kind of chuckling that we both did it. I know you had a big event last week, so yeah, I can imagine how busy the things are. I know it's been nuts for me.
I know. I actually was thinking about that too when I was sitting down here. I was like, oh, people are going to think, oh, it must be a sponsored podcast. They got dressed up.
I didn't think about it. I just, I don't know. It's funny.
You're right. But it is a crazy time of year, but federal stimulus is coming down. I just saw that there looks to be a new smart cities bill reintroduced at the federal legislature today. So,
Really?
Things are moving. Yeah. So
Do they need a podcast to sponsor?
I think they should.
To tell their stories? Right on. So tell us about today's guest. I know you've known him for a long time. I've got a short story, but tell us about him.
Yeah, no, David Stevens has been quite the incredible leader for the greater Phoenix region and actually the state of Arizona for quite some time now. I actually met him way back when I think I was still working for the city of Phoenix, or I just started the nonprofit. And I was looking for leaders to talk about the idea of building a smart region. And I believe it was Supervisor Gates from Maricopa County that introduced me to David Stevens, who at the time was the CIO. And here I am, a young guy talking to a CIO of the fourth largest county in the country. And he sat down and had a coffee with me, and he just ideated with me and dug into the ideas, the thoughts, the vision, and really, helped frame what we eventually are at today. And he was one of the first leaders that I was able to speak to. And so David has continued to be a real mentor and friend and partner of mine, over the last 6-7 years. And so I really thank him for what he's been able to do and help us get the smart region up and off the ground. So I'm excited that he was able to kind of leave the public sector and go to the private sector. And now he's able to help us from the outside in at WWT. So I think it's going to be a good conversation, and tremendously excited about WWT to be kind of our first premier sponsor. So should be a great conversation. Shall we get him in here?
Definitely. Let's get them on.
Let's do.
Support for this episode of the Urban Complex comes from Worldwide Technology.
What if we could connect people to new possibilities, turn thinking into a way forward, solve problems before they become a problem, and share the future with everyone? We can. At WWT, we connect businesses to technology to make the impossible possible, to reach better decisions faster, to accelerate progress. Together, let's make a new world happen.
All right, David Stevens, let Chris and I give you a warm welcome to the Urban Complex podcast. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks, guys. Good to be with you.
Great to see you.
Yeah, excited to have you on here, David. I know we go back to your time at CIO of the county, but what we like to do is really hear about the stories of the guests we bring on. So why don't you start with some information about you? What do you want our podcast audience to know about your background and where you came from? We're going to talk about your role with WWT in a little bit. Let's focus on your journey. How did you get to where you're at today?
Yeah, that's a great question. I blame you a little bit to begin with.
I saw that.
Lots of people do.
Yeah.
I still remember, Dom, when I first met you, and I forget which board member introduced us way back in the day, and we grabbed a coffee, and you had this bold vision back then, right, about smart cities, and I started pontificating about that while I was at Maricopa County as the CIO. I did that there, by the way, for about 6 years, so I had a wonderful opportunity, really, just to impact wide set of technologies and really interact with not only the federal government, but the state government and the cities, and, get some national exposure. So fond memories of those times, but really you were a catalyst back in the day of just diving into smart cities and what those could be. And, here we are today, right? So personally, yeah, spent, like I said, 6 years Maricopa County CIO. Prior to that, I spent about 5 to 6 years as CIO as a judicial branch here in Arizona. Back at that time, Governor Brewer was in place, and I had the opportunity to be appointed by the Senate to the Commission on Judicial Conduct, which was really quite an experience to go in there and spend time with our judges as they had ethics complaints and such, raised against them, and sort of weigh that. Had an opportunity to spend some time on ITAC, which is an Arizona local company a board that oversees technology expenditures for the state of Arizona. So I had some broad experience around that. Left Maricopa County, as you all know, and jumped in with a local company here in Arizona, where I was fortunate enough to lead our services in that. Did that for a little over 3 years. Feel like I had a part in helping to grow them and what they were doing. So wonderful time there, wonderful lessons learned, great people. And that fast forwards really, to today, what we'll jump into next. But on top of that, I spent 6 years in the U.S. Army, so I'm proud of that. I enjoyed my time serving our country back then as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you for your service. And, it's we're sad to see you leave, the public sector and go find, your way in the private sector. But I know that we're happy to have you on the outside working in now. We know you're a true champion for government innovation. And so it's been fun to work with you both on the inside when we were public sector together, and now on the outside with you at WWT, and really helping us to drive innovation. So let's talk about your role in WWT. This role as a chief strategic advisor, what are you really trying to achieve for WWT?
Yeah, that's a great question. So joined WWT in January. So I've got about 5 months under my belt. So I'm still taking in the whole ecosystem of what they are and who they are. But generally speaking, there's a few things I definitely want to contribute and be a part of. One of them obviously is how do we connect government, academia, utilities, and companies to who Worldwide is, our full capabilities and our ability to deliver transformational business outcomes at scale. And so connecting the dots on that, right? Really distilling that and figuring out how do we have the right conversations and, ultimately get a shot at executing on that. So that's a big focus, right?
Yeah, and it's a big role to play. I mean, the ability to connect the dots between those different sectors, whether it's local government, state government, any level of government, academia, university, and then private sector. I mean, that's just a very difficult role to play. But WWT seems to fit really nicely in that space, and I think we're really excited about kind of the innovation we're going to be able to lead together with you as that kind of systems integrator, and really playing that role of bringing us all together when we know we struggle to do that ourselves.
Yeah, that's actually a really interesting point. Is there anything about WWT, Worldwide Technologies itself, that you want to mention? Like, I know that through ASU, I'd worked with WWT for 1 or 2 projects. I know some peers had as well, but I don't think people really understand how big and how much WWT brings. Anything about the company that you want to mention before we jump into our next question?
Yeah. Thank you, Chris. I mean, it is sort of a sleeping giant, right? I mean, it's based on a strong work ethic and basically, do a good job at the end of the day for your customers, right? But we've been doing better about getting our message out there. And so, I mean, one fact that you may or may not know is Forbes top 100 best places to work 10 years in a row. So the people are committed to the company. They love their work. They're happy. And that's demonstrated through recognition like that. Also, recently, we were just named Time's top 100 innovative companies. Pretty significant, right? Worldwide does business with the biggest companies in the world, a true global company at scale, at digital transformation, all the way down to, basic block and tackle of networks and security and data centers and so forth, right? So we have a new campaign called Make a New World Happen, which I think is really exciting, that later I'll talk about a little bit as we weave it into these questions. But really, it's taking the breadth as an integrator, a trusted advisor, and that full capabilities, and really just weaving it together for the customer at the end of the day.
Isn't Worldwide one of the largest U.S. private companies, and like doing something on the order of $7 billion in revenue a year? I mean,
Yeah, I think we're just over 13 billion.
Oh, 13. Oh, wow.
It's just off.
Largest, by the way, the largest African American owned company
Oh, wow.
as well here in the U.S. So absolutely, I think we're somewhere north of 7,000 employees across the globe. Definitely a significant hub here in Phoenix as well, which is exciting. Again, brand commitment, first class service. Those are things that WWT espouses to be. So.
Well, okay, so you've had tons of background. You just shared that. Thanks for the brief overview of WT. Tell us about your view, Dave Stevens, of smart cities. What are they? What are you doing now to advance the movement? What are you excited about as you are here on the Urban Complex?
Oh, Chris, Dom, this feels a little bit like the cloud discussion. What's cloud? And
exactly.
It's tough. There's so many things to so many people. But I'll give you my perspective for what it's worth, right? When we talk about this, I used to talk about this and still do, really in terms of digital moments, right? And those digital moments span zip codes, and they span from rural to urban. And really, as a citizen or a constituent or a consumer out there, you want ubiquitous access to technology. And in this case, when we're talking smart cities, it takes a coalition of a lot of people to make that happen, both private and public and policy. But broadly speaking, you get into things like, I'll just give a few examples, right? Open data concepts, right? The ability for academia and private sector companies to have access to data that governments and research institutions have to better push entrepreneurial opportunities, right? As an example, gets into a whole host of things in terms of efficient buildings and smart corridors and connected vehicles, and the list goes on. But I think fundamentally, it's about living in a digital moment, right? As a citizen, as a constituent.
I absolutely love that. Great response. We're going to have to maybe trademark that, living in the digital moment. I really like that response. So help us understand how that view that, living in the digital moment and kind of what you just expounded on, how does that fit with kind of this idea that Chris and I had with the Urban Complex and our theme around smarter cities for a smarter tomorrow? Why were you the first to join the podcasting platform, as our sponsor? What stuck out to you with this theme?
Quite a few things. I mean, first and foremost, both of you guys are passionate about this. You've been committed to it, and you've been on it for a long haul. I live in Arizona, right? And so I like the notion of making a difference here in our own backyard. But I also believe that the work that we're doing here, can be transportable across this nation and frankly to other countries as well. So, this notion of tackling digital equity and digital inclusion, and, you hear the word digital divide, right? That's the work that we're about. And it takes a lot of different talents, right, to do that. And so the work that you guys have been doing to bring policy leaders across city, state, county, federal government, right, as well as ASU, Chris, you and Lev out there, and have worldwide to be at a table at that and take our integrator capabilities and our depth of talent as a no-brainer from my perspective.
Yeah. No, we're excited to have you as part of this, and I think that's a great point. We've talked for a long time, David, about collaboration being our biggest competitive advantage that not only we have here, but really for the future of cities and regions across the world. And so, we're excited to have a partner like you willing to roll up your sleeves and really tackle these challenges together when we might not know for certain where the future might land. And so, how do you think WWT is helping to shape cities, counties, and states? What seems to be resonating with you as you're interacting with those in our audience, whether it's mayors, city managers, CIOs, resiliency officers, transportation leaders, et cetera? How is WWT literally shaping the future of our cities and towns?
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, that's in our ethos, right? I mean, our culture and who we are is about the promise of a stronger tomorrow. When you even look at the notion of making the world happen, you look at our founders, you look at our senior leadership, it's about bringing to bear our talents and making a brighter future, economic development, job creation, citizens to be able to fully engage. So, you take that and then you look at what are we seeing, to your point, with mayors and city council members and so on and so forth across the country. It's a lot of the usual stuff, right? I mean, first and foremost, it's, what's the policy that I have to deal with at that level to make this stuff happen? How do I navigate the funding? How do I measure and make sure I'm a good steward of how I'm using the funds? How do I combat all the, actors that want to jump into the middle of this as well? And then, they talk broadly about digital transformation, which means, again, it's like the cloud topic, but at the end of the day, how do I digitize my business? How do I, take what I have, data being my best asset that I possibly have, not let it be used as a tool against me, ideally, rather let it be a tool that actually can do some good, right? So they'll talk AI, they'll talk digital transformation, they'll talk performance metrics and dashboards, right? How to measure this stuff, both internally as well as externally. Very just simple ideas, right? You think about planning and zoning in cities and states and the challenges with that. How am I a person that comes in? I need to deal with the city, I need to deal with the county, I need to deal with the state. Well, could I have a digital moment, if I can use that language again, right, where I can transact all of that business wherever I'm at in one single transaction? That's a lofty goal.
He doesn't work that fast to trademark. You can still use it. Plus, it came from you. We'll have to give you rights.
Right? Everybody's talking about 5G and LTE, how that's going to make a difference. And yeah, Dom, lots of stuff in that, but they're definitely interested at the end of the day in making a difference for the people that they serve.
Yeah. And what I think is great about what you just mentioned, and what I think I love about working with WWT is that you do work with all levels of government, cities to counties, to regions, to states, to even the federal government. And what Chris and I have noticed with this podcast is that cities want to be able, just with our cities that we're talking to, they want to be able to learn from others and take what others have done and just kind of pivot it to meet their community's needs and then try to solve their own challenge. And I think that's what's so exciting about being able to work with WWT is, even as a city or a state, we can take a lesson learned that you've done with a customer at the federal level and apply those same digital transformation lessons learned here at the state, local, county, whatever it might be. And so I think that's the exciting part about WWT and your breadth of your reach is that you've got all these great customers and stories and use cases and examples of best practices to pull from. I mean, it really helps accelerate that digital transformation when you're able to understand everything that's going on at all different levels.
Yeah, it's great to have that insight, to your point. And frankly, the work that you and Chris are doing to share this broadly out to the audience through this as an example, it's fantastic, right?
When it's not like a secret sauce, right? They want the ideas, but they want to make it uniquely theirs. And they're looking for kind of catalysts, and WWT can be both the catalyst of the idea, they can be the catalyst of the resource. You can even scale up to a full program. You can bring in the best of what you're seeing in industry. And it's unique. It's like ideation, test, and then deploy to scale. We hear that from a lot of the people that have been on in a number of ways. So it's really been fun.
Come to that purpose. I mean, at the end of the day, not only the ideation component, which is critical, but execute, right? Deliver. Yeah. Talking about. Yeah. That sometimes means bringing other people to the table, right?
So this is great, David. One thing I'm really interested in, you've talked about your background, you've talked about WWT, you've talked a little bit about your role, but you've talked about it in the first 5 months. I think you have some great ideas. And when you think of the great Wayne Gretzky, he said, skate's where the puck's going, not to where it's been. So help our audience understand where you and WWT and your chief strategic advisor role think the industry is moving and how they can kind of get behind that and also be thinking on the future. A lot of them are building their own horizons, their own direction. Where do you see that going?
Yeah, fantastic question. Again, let's get the magic 8 ball out here and think about this a little bit, but some perspective on that. I mean, some things that we definitely know and some themes that we see out there, we all collectively, right? Intersection of actionable data and data privacy. That's huge. That's something we're all going to have to think about very carefully as we really work on smart cities and what they can be. So that's a key component, I think, on the horizon will get a lot of attention and some thinking. The urbanization globally, right? We might have talked a little bit about that. That's proliferating at explosive growth rates. So again, it pushes the opportunity to figure out how to work in that kind of environment. I think someone said it's going to be a $2 to $3 trillion business roughly by 2025. Again, so if you look at that growth and that kind of a number, that tells you lots is going to frankly change about what it is and what it isn't over the next decade. Being able to deliver those mobile moments I talked about in both rural, again, and urban settings, right? Again, people don't care what zip code you're in. They want to be able to have a ubiquitous experience no matter where you are, right? So that's going to take a lot of thinking, a lot of investment and opportunity. Optimization of government systems, and a whole host of things will go into that. Smart grids and efficient energies and connected vehicles and smart buildings like power over Ethernet, right? And I actually saw something very cool in Fort Worth where an entire building, hotel building, was power over Ethernet as an example.
Wow.
So we're starting to look at that, right? How can I deliver that kind of energy savings to my buildings, right? Access to the open data. I think we might have mentioned that earlier potentially, but that's huge, right? Research institutions, governments, entrepreneurs having access to this data to bring new product and opportunities out there. Evidence-based practice for judiciary and for other government sections could be vastly impacted by this kind of technology. And ultimately, the proliferation on this is going to create economic development, economic growth, digital access and equity for everybody, which is key. So there's a number of themes I think we'll see start shaking out here. Smart corridors, connected vehicles, right? The list goes on.
Yeah, those are amazing points. And we have, David, a ton of listeners from all across the country, at all levels of government. And I know that WWT has some unique capabilities because, we're seeing a lot of federal stimulus money come down, and a lot of these cities, counties, states are going to be sitting on, kind of a lot of quote unquote cash, so to speak. And the worry is that don't just rush out and buy the shiny object off the shelf, maybe test, pilot, test some things before you actually try to spend a ton of money to deploy something. WWT, I remember talking a while back about your innovation lab that you have. How is that being leveraged by governments to kind of maybe test and tinker with things before they actually deploy it? How might governments around the country kind of leverage your capabilities there?
That's a fantastic tool that's being leveraged and could be leveraged, frankly, greater, Advanced Technology Center, the ATC. I think last count was somewhere about $800 million invested in that roughly. And it's real, and it's got a whole host of talent behind that where you're able to spin up and test a number of technologies at scale and proof them out prior to ever, configuring and delivering them and put them into your environment. So a lot of the stuff that we're talking about, it could be smart components, it could be cloud, it could be AI, it could be networking gear, it could be a whole host of the ecosystem that you're trying to vet to make sure is it actually going to deliver on some of these results.
Yeah, I just remember when I first heard about it and learned about it. I mean, I'm not a very technical guy, but it just blew my mind about the scale and the capabilities that a government could access without buying or owning it itself, right? It's almost like a sandbox, a little playground for you to go out there to tinker and play.
I mean, I'm still learning about it too. I mean, I'm relatively new, but the more I see it in action and hear about the stories that it's impacting, it's incredible the foresight that, the president and CEO of the company had to invest in that, right?
Yeah, it's incredible. And I mean, I have a soft spot too. I remember hearing a story as well that your president or one of your executive leaders is a big soccer guy. So I believe all your boardrooms, all your breakout rooms are named after soccer teams. So I had a little sweet spot in my heart for that.
Yeah. I think he played professionally if I remember.
That's awesome. That's great.
Well, we do normally wrap up with a couple standard questions. I have a hunch we don't need to ask who you think we should have on the show, because I have a feeling with 13 billion in revenues a year, you have a few customers that are probably either we've already talked to or that we'll have on in the future. So we don't need to talk that. But just, Dom and I, we've realized you can't do it alone. We've had so much help and support, both with our day jobs and things we've done and the podcast and whatnot. Like anyone out there that you uniquely feel has helped you in your journey and that you want to make a mention on the Urban Podcast?
I love this question, by the way. So I appreciate you asking it. And I'm the same way. I think about it. I'm like, man, I'm standing on the shoulders of so many giants.
Yeah.
Frankly, that helped me get to where I am today. And obviously I still have a lot to learn, but they shaped me along the way. And I'll name a few, but it's exhaustive, right? But way back when I worked for a gentleman by the name of John Barrett. He's retired now, but he was huge in shaping me and my abilities, and basically gave me a shot and had confidence in me more than I probably had in myself at the time. So he's a man I really think highly of. There's a whole host of county leaders actually here in Maricopa County that falls into the bill. I don't want to name them all, but a number of the board members and county managers and the CFO at the time, really impactful for me. Frankly, I'd like to give a shout out to my current leadership, Brian Thomas and Matthew Jenkins, bringing me on board and, seeing what we could do together. But yeah, I've been fortunate to work with some really great people who decided to invest in me and trust in me and, let me fail, right? Lots of times along the way.
That doesn't happen. Come on.
So yeah, lots of folks in there, family members, right? I mean, we all have a village of people who help us become who we are. So.
Well, David, Dom and I, we appreciate the support from WOT. We appreciate your partnership. You've been counseling along the way, both of us. And so with that, the Urban Complex gives a big note of thanks to today's guest, David Stevens, Chief Strategic Officer for the SLED at Worldwide Technology and former CIO of Maricopa County. Thanks for joining us, David. It's been awesome.
Thanks, David. I know we'll talk soon.
See
ya. All right, Chris, there's David Stevens. What did you think about the conversation?
I didn't know him well until we started this process in just like WWT. Like I've worked with them once or twice before, but every time I keep hearing more, you hear more about the company. They're growing. Like I think I heard the pitch a while back. They were at $7 billion. Clearly, they're growing. They're now at $13 billion a year in revenues. So it's nice to have a testament like a WWT backing our podcast. It's kind of makes me feel good. But just the fact that their company is really growing and successful, and now they're bringing on some public sector experience, and he's got a vision. Just gets me excited. But the thing that you caught on to that I remember talking about and trying to get up there. In fact, we were supposed to go at one point for some of our mobile app work way back when, and we didn't make it, was that innovation lab. I think they called it Advanced Technology Lab. The thing that probably kept us from going at the time was very data center focused. But I know from talking to David and hearing how it's evolved, I mean, $800 million investment. In the show, you talked about you're not a tech person. I am. And, like the difference, say like a Peachtree Corners where the entire city is the living lab. The beautiful thing about this thing, the Advanced Technology Lab that WWT is talking about, is you can try something in their environment that can model yours. It's almost like a digital twin, so to speak. We've talked about that in the podcast before. And you can kind of see how to tweak it. You can shape it. They can figure out how to model it so it's actually going to be working in your environment. And then whether you choose to deploy it yourself or they do it, I mean, I think they've really set themselves up to differentiate with that Advanced Technology Lab. It's pretty cool. $800 million investment.
I know that's absolutely incredible. I mean, we last week we talked with Deborah Lamb about, you can run challenges and not have to fund the whole project to kind of get innovation moving. I mean, here's a perfect resource for cities to not have to set up their own, I don't know what, like beta testing environment. They can just leverage something that someone else has invested so much.
A lot of times the cities won't even know how to set up the lab itself. Like they'll actually do the entire deploy, and then they'll find out if it works or not after they've deployed all the resources, spent all the money. And here you can start, again, we keep hearing, think big, but start small. This way to start small where it's not even in your environment, someone else's.
Yeah. And that's what I think is, again, so excited about David getting to be over at WWT is because honestly, they were a little bit of a hidden secret. Like they weren't very widely known, at least in the greater Phoenix area. And so now getting the word out about these resources that our governments can use and test, I mean, it's going to be incredible to see the kind of exponential growth and leveraging of those facilities. I think it's just something too good to not take advantage of, right? If you're a city manager, if you're a CIO, if you're a smart cities director, how are you not leveraging a resource like that? It just seems.
But I think they also do it like an exec briefing center too. You can bring out your city leadership and actually whiteboard out and find out, and they bring in resources. So I think it's even more than just the lab side too. So, those interested will have to figure out and talk to David.
Yeah, we'll have to have a smart region EBC out there. That'll be great.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Especially now we can travel. But yeah, what really stuck out to me is the digital moment thing. I don't know why it stuck out so much. It just makes a lot of sense. Like we always, I mean, in sports and everything, we talk about living in the moment, living in the digital moment, understanding the intricacies, the ability to really transform the service you're providing in the moment to the customer, thinking about how might we transform this to digital for my customers right now to better improve the quality of service. I think there was just something unique about.
You keyed on it. It's like, it's kind of like what you need to do, when you need to do it, where you need to do it, with what mechanism you have at your disposal to do it. That's how I envision it. We'll see what WWT and David shapes in his role. It's really cool.
Totally, because I think sometimes, and it's good to plan, it's good to think 10 years out, but sometimes we get stuck in what is it called? The paralysis by analysis, right? No, live in the moment. I mean, there's a ton of challenges right now, especially due to COVID, that we need to roll up our sleeves and really get to work. So I love that idea about living in the digital moment. And then last thing that I really love about WWT and kind of their focus is, again, their commitment to digital equity and digital inclusion. As I've been doing a lot of research on WWT, they are strongly committed to connecting every person everywhere and bringing the resources needed to participate in the new digital economy and the new remote classroom. So excited to be partnered with such a strong organization that has strong feelings for digital equity and digital inclusion. That's just
another theme carried over from last week. I mean, with Deborah Lamb, funny.
Totally.
Okay, you normally ask me, Dom. Let's change pace here. Let's talk cracks in the pavement. I need a break. I couldn't find anything. What do you got for an idea?
Well, I think I kind of mentioned it earlier in the intro, but I was reading today around this new legislation that was announced. The Smart Cities and Community Act. And it just really gets me thinking about the once in a generation moment we have before us, especially as governments, as universities, with the federal stimulus, the money that is flowing down to really reshape and reinvent not only our cities, but I mean, what WWT is saying, our world, right? Here's an opportunity. A lot of our governments are going to be really cash rich for a little bit. And it gets me excited, but then it worries me at the same time, because we've had a lot of discussions about not just chasing the shiny object, not just going out and spending money just to spend money for money's sake, but actually thinking about best practices, thinking about how we might collaborate with others around us, whether it's a school district, a neighboring government, a university, to how might we coordinate, align, and prioritize investments so that way we're making the greatest impact for the greatest good. I think this is a typical cracks in the pavement moment, because I think there's going to be winners. There's going to be cities and regions and states that get it right, and then there's going to be those that don't. And I'm just worried.
But the good thing is, at least those that don't, though, while they won't have all they can figure out from what happens. But as I hear you speaking, something that jumps to my mind, it's like, back in the 30s, did the people that got the money from the New Deal, did they really know at the time that it was the time? Tough to say, right? History tells. But like, as I'm hearing, it's like people have been calling it the Green Deal, or now when you talk about the Smart Cities Act, oh my gosh, it could be the Smart Deal. Like, literally, cities can transform themselves. And to your point, like, there are going to be some that accelerate super fast. But once it's figured out, like we've seen the smart city movement so tough because it's been tech led, very convoluted. And even our guest said it's tough stuff. You have to really get in, digitally transform, educate along the way. But now with the money to do it and the wherewithal, and you and I mean, we've been at this a while. It's not like we're sitting here. Now we got to go figure out the ideas. No way. We've had the ideas. It just hasn't been the right time. And now with the money coming, people leaning in, like, it's time to take some risk. And those, to your point, those that are ready to take the risk can completely get a different trajectory for their citizens, for their cities, for how money moves, for how seamlessness. I mean, your vision of a region, it's not like and the scope of what can be a region is even bigger than we probably all thought, given the amount of money that's being talked about.
Totally. And I just briefly scanned the bill today, so I don't have much insight, but I just love how it's aligning with everything our podcast guests have said about how to structure your smart city internally, about working horizontally across departments. So here's what the bill says. The bill serves to coordinate existing smart cities and communities programs across federal agencies through a development of an interagency task force and to make available vast federal resources to states and localities. So it's literally saying, it's literally saying,
are we hearing it here first on the Urban Complex? Dom Papa is going to go from the Smart State Initiative to the Smart Country Initiative. Did they personally hand deliver this to you? Does Sandra have something to be worried about here leaving ACA?
I just laugh. I think it's like, where they listen to the podcast, we would love that. But they're saying, oh my gosh, we have a bunch of silos. We need a task force that's actually going to work cross agency, right? And start to coordinate efforts between the DOT and the DOD.
Well, we heard it from Deborah. She'd be happy to coordinate. We know we've been building this thing. I mean, at least there are some grassroots sides. Good to know from the top, they're thinking that way too. So whether it's, how are the messages getting there? Clearly, people are realizing it's that collaboration model, but it's painting the vision. It's exciting.
Yep, gets me excited for the future.
Cool. All right. Well, great cracks in the pavement idea. I think that's a wrap.
Awesome. See you next week. Yep. Bye.
Thanks for listening to The Urban Complex. Smarter cities for a stronger tomorrow. Please find us on where you listen, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. We do love your feedback. Let us know if you have ideas for guests or questions to air on Cracks in the Pavement via social media. The Urban Complex is found on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. Or just shoot me an email, chris@theurbancomplex.com. Until next time.